Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So we're now in 7th weeks this class. Actually, now long penance race has closed. Do you like to entertain the kind of this Major League Baseball? Actually, fantastic. What Bumgarner? Very popular name. Touches Giants to win 5 World Series titles in 3 World Series titles in 5 years consecutively. It's actually unusual record, I suppose. Just ended October 12-14. Actually, now the season is exactly that. Many people may be under weather. Are you alright? So in this class we discuss local laws in terms of legal research. Perhaps 3 weeks consecutively from the federal regulations, state regulations, local laws. Consider, for example, the kind of questions. What are issues of the community, and are there a specific local law on communities? So you search the public website, for example, what a Gwangju local assembly, and you will have various information. Typically some compilation of ordinances. Let me introduce my taste in that context later in this class. I am a kind of smoker, so I'm concerned if the local administration would favor the smokers or non-smokers. So extent of regulation. Often the kind of topics, as you'll be illustrated later, fall within the responsibility of local government. And also, we'll take an example in the U.S. societies, which have long have some kind of a public ailment, a school gun shooting, so youth gun violence pose challenges, quite striking grief and anguish of common people in the United States, would often be seen in TV news nowadays. So gun regulation would be one important agenda nationwide. How do you suppose any most effective way to deal with the kind of a dilemma from many sources? You will recall, for example, the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, and also some great initiative of researcher around late of 1990s, 1999 or others. 2 important acts were created to respond with the gun violence, especially involving youths and public schools, high schools. And the kind of response have been notable and conspicuous the effect of that federal measure would be questioned. However, the American people would actually not be discontented. Not contented with the kind of the paper-based approach. Actually, they like to see some tangible, palpable outcome to reduce, mitigate the kind of violence. So the local response in some aspect would be more effective. One statistic disclosed that the federal prosecutions against youth gun violence would not be conspicuous. A small number of prosecutions have been tried over history, decades. 45 cases, for example. I'm not sure. We will explore a little in depth about that issue later in this class. That is in contrast with state prosecution cases, or per se, thousands, hundreds of thousands of prosecutions have been instituted to respond with gun violence. We would not figure purely on based on number of prosecution. However, it has some implications that federal response would be less active for reasons. For example, imagine how the federalism would operate through the criminal justice system of a state, and some other points about psychology or sociology to deal with the specific challenges in local particularities. So many empirical studies now support the kind of a distinction between inner city gun violence and rural or suburb context of a problem. Our kind of public school might be located in suburb, and parents or a school authority would face with distinct challenges in the context. So the local laws would be more competent to deal with the kind of particularities. So we consider the assistance of other social sciences, notably psychology and sociology, to shape the American legal system. How do we create any most adequate system to affect our public lives? Question. And one article in my plan of this class disclosed some modification in common law theory, so local code, and many judicial nature deals would reform what the kind of traditional rules on tort damages and others. We often take the facet of or from vicarious liability when we consider uses would be minor. Of course, the culpability in criminal terms of criminal law would be ascribed. Nonetheless, they lack the resources and assets to respond with civil damages. So the approaches of court would find alternative source, and vicarious liability would be most obvious alternative in that case. and scroll authority will come in the same concern. Of course, the effect would be dubious actually, since the parents or school authority actually in direct parties, so may not factor directly to reduce the firearms violence or gun violence. They also is minded with different types of guns, handguns, shotguns, and rifles. Do you see any difference among the types? So the kind of many factors actually plays not irrelevant concern, which requires a specific measure to be suited with the circumstances. Actually. So in that point, local laws should be purchased as one of most direct, immediate, and perhaps effective way to counter the kind of challenges and or risks. One other article to highlight the importance of local laws in our public lives would be on the syringe sales. We will take a little extended review from the article. Often the science would give us a precaution that the use of syringe would be one contributor to HIV infections and some other diseases. So the point now was attempted to respond by local administration would be to regulate the sales of a syringe. So what we have some our community neighborhood, or actually kind of patient who has need to injection of drugs could be injected to cure the disease or treat the symptom kind of. So insulin would be needed for diabetes patient. So we would call kind of patients as IDUs, injection drug users, and the syringe sales would depend on the kind of patient group, which also is related to the public health and AIDS and others. So the funding institutions, American Association Against AIDS or National Academy of Science and National Institute of Health and concerned public universities would engage in a scope of empirical research about the circumstances and consequence developed over the kind of disease. So syringe sales of syringe is one point to be assessed about pestilence, or disease, HIV infection, AIDS. The research finding supported the little effect of public regulation about syringe sales. In that case, the intention and conscience, the kind of personal policy of pharmacists would have play a primary role to make any a meaningful outcome in research. But actually we can have some awareness a terminal of a policy basis, and also a local context of a response would not be negated. In some cases, could outrival any grand scale of response in terms of policy factor. So as a legal researcher, I encourage you to utilize kind of local laws to prove your thesis, and can be interconnected with your constitutional question you'd like to address, to discuss. So my graduate student is now interested in constitutional reform in Malaysia. It's the Islamic State, and dual dimension between secular and religious society in sections is notable, and his agreements personally embraced of history is that the freedom of expression has long been chilled by partly from our lack of recognition, and also some slim attention about the context. So his focus was on First Amendment right of freedom of expression, and some legislative reform have been actually discussed, but well foreshadowed in comparison with Western peers. The extent of First Amendment right will not be so satisfactory. The kind of question would generally involve the constitutional and statutory levels in our thought. Nonetheless, some local laws would have some great insight to penetrate all the concerns of freedom of expression. The end result would be reincarnated in local government, and also could be interchangeable in system, and actually the kind of culprit could control the whole of nation. That would be most conspicuously comes into our concern in a local level. The kind of contrast would enhance the understanding of audience. So I will plan to give the kind of advice of progress of the students. In any case, local laws will have some close and actually integral to be inalienable, I consider. So I expect learning outcome on the part of my students. By the end of this week, we should be able to interpret local laws, analyze the impact of local laws on communities, analyze approaches to local law reform. So my intention in this class would my advice is to pick up some simple cases about local law reform, and to facilitate, in the end, to facilitate your understanding of local regulations. So smoking is topic I like to address in the next class, and I picked up the Franklin County, the state of Washington, and also like to make a point by juxtaposing the Gwangju case about smoking regulations. I found it surprising that the extent of regulation is more rigorous in Gwangju. So many notorious open areas of space are in statutory ambit. So ordinance will regulate kind of park area and also bus stop and taxi stop. In contrast, you'll find the smoking prohibition is only limited to enclosed facilities rented, leased, owned by a county government. In Franklin case, actually I enjoy smoking, so how do you consider, for example, the constitutional question, which is hypothetical? I'm not sure if it could be filed in actual terms to dispute the right to happiness, or how do you find the personal liberty to smoke? Of course, that is liberty can well be restricted for public reasons. How do you find the elements of right to privacy against the public needs? It's a balancing test, or do you see it adequate to apply stern legal? I do not consider it would kind of suspect classification as so equal or protection of laws. You know, what intermediate scrutiny, strict scrutiny kind of concept in jurisprudence of constitutional law. So equal suspect classification is one element. The right to privacy is generally considered as one of fundamental rights. So the standard of review would not be a lawyer in my understanding. Nonetheless, the publicness would, in many cases, have a persuasive power. Rationale would often slant on that. So the agencies in reform of smoking regulation would also consider kind of questions. So one or criteria to assess the competence and quality of public officers is the extent of litigation involving his policy area. So this is that kind of statement, but should be received in other sense. Actually, the need to consult lawyers is often required when we enter into the stage of reform. So in the last class we have considered the state agency involving in amendment or any approaches on interpretation with public, what is stringent materials, public relations, kind of brochure, or many public announcement would be developed by local officers, and the kind of legal aspect often is intertwined to pose a multifaceted endeavor, scary overall. So the legal expert team would be take his office in the local government. In some cases, they would consult with outside experts, law officers rather. So that is one wisdom to deal with their responsibility. And I also illustrate two examples. It involves the U.S. locale, Topeka, Kansas, California. This illustrations plainly shows the adequacy of local ordinance in a specific area of concern. Consider, for example, motion picture, television, and photographic production ordinance, or filming ordinance. The ordinance is enacted in Malibu, California. Of course, it is the region we see the Hollywood and also the related business, entertainment and others have flourished in the United States, and of course one of most powerful provider of world cinemas and films of the world market is what actually major businesses in the United States. And once debated involving WTO laws, actually so the exemption based on public moral or order would be one point of this contention raised from Europe or other interested countries. And so actually cinema would be related in a policy, national policy, or kind of not openly amenable to the economic terms, free market. So some exemptions will be found, for example, in GATT and WTO laws. So how do you consider any plausible shape and limitations and exceptions among free flow of cinemas and others? So consider the needs of this regulation in Malibu, California. Perhaps some ordinances would be particular to facilitate our local goals, legislative objectives of local government. So we have many historic places, for example, to be preserved. A kind of concern is also related with tourism or any cultural industries, and the ordinance would be a vehicle to respond with kind of local needs, and other distinct rules may surprise your normal sensibility. Don't get yourself surprised. It is needed to satisfy the legislative objective of local government. And in Topeka, Kansas, they need an ordinance that prohibits the sale of city or malt beverages before noon or after 8:00 on Sundays, unless it is Easter Sunday. So I have mentioned the school gun violence. And how do you find the grand scale of federal laws, between the grand scale of federal laws and a simple response of a metal detector as a mandate for the school authority? So the school authority is required to install the kind of metal detector, for example, that will produce any most direct effect against the gun holders, in particular, is often perpetrating hidden context, so they hide guns, and the peer students and teachers could have no chance to prevent from any initiation or furtherance. So, and how do you find the strengthening of disciplinary system in public school? And also consider, for example, the new theory now about civil damages. We will consider the kind of question in more details. Okay, then we'll see in the last part of this session. Since I need to conduct in auto mode, so you will see my face, and I have used some online projections about the public website and others. Let us expect for a new model class. See you.